She was only 8 when the sky turned red, when the howls of war drowned out the lullabies of her village, when fire devoured the homes she once knew, and blood soaked the soil beneath her feet. Laila watched her father die, his final roar silenced by the claws of the Iron Fang Alpha. Her mother's screams were swallowed by chains. Her people, once proud, were dragged into a decade of darkness. Welcome back to our channel. Now sit back, relax, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling tales that will leave you howling for more. The smoke reached Laila before the screams did. She woke to her mother's hand clamped over her mouth, those familiar fingers now trembling, cold with fear. The acrid taste of burning wood coated her tongue. Through the window, orange light danced across the ceiling of their small cottage, shadows writhing like living things. "Mama?" The word came out muffled against her mother's palm. "Quiet, little moon. Quiet." Her mother's voice cracked on the second word. "They're here." The howl that split the night didn't belong to their pack. It was deeper, hungrier, the sound of something that had already tasted victory. Laila's wolf stirred inside her, that small spark of beast that wouldn't fully wake for another 10 years, and even it recoiled. Her father burst through the door, his chest heaving, sword already drawn. Blood not his own dripped from the blade onto their wooden floor. The drops seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. "They've breached the southern wall." He crossed to them in 3 strides, his calloused hands cupping Laila's face. His palms smelled of iron and smoke. "The king has already surrendered. Coward." Her mother spat the word. "His father would have. His father is dead." Her father's eyes found Laila's, and she saw something there she'd never seen before. Fear. Raw and absolute. "Take her to the mountains. To your mother. Go now." Rowan. Now Celeste. But the door exploded inward before her mother could move. Splinters of wood became shrapnel, and suddenly their home was full of bodies. Iron Fang warriors, massive and scarred, filled the small space with their presence. Laila's mother tried to hold her back, tried to keep her small hands pressed over her daughter's eyes. But Laila had always been stronger than she looked. She twisted free, and the sight that greeted her would carve itself into her dreams for the rest of her life. The village square had become an abattoir. Bodies littered the cobblestones, some still moving, most not. The moon hung full, and blood red above it all, a cosmic witness to the slaughter. And in the center of it all stood Alpha Mordecai. He was enormous. Not just tall, but massive in the way ancient trees were massive, in the way mountains were massive, as if the world had to bend around him to accommodate his existence. Scars covered every visible inch of skin. A roadmap of violence survived. His eyes found her father with casual interest. Another hero. His voice rolled like distant thunder. How tiresome. Her father charged. Gods, but he was brave. Foolish and brave, and so painfully mortal against something that seemed carved from myth itself. His sword swept toward Mordecai's throat with desperate speed. Mordecai caught the blade with his bare hand. Blood welled between his fingers, but he didn't flinch. He looked at the sword, then at her father, and smiled. It was the smile of something that had forgotten how to pretend humanity. "Did you think that would work?" Mordecai's other hand shot forward, fingers closing around her father's throat. He lifted him off the ground as easily as Laila might lift a doll. "Did you think courage mattered?" "Let him go." Her mother's scream tore through the night. Warriors held her back, held Laila back, forced them to watch as Mordecai's fingers tightened. Her father's face turned red, then purple. His legs kicked at empty air. The sword clattered to the cobblestones. "Look at me, child." Mordecai's eyes found Laila's. They were the color of old amber, ancient and cold. "This is what resistance earns you." His hand became a fist. There was a sound like wet branches breaking. Her father went still. Mordecai dropped the body like refuse. It crumpled onto the blood-slicked stones, and Laila's mind simply stopped, refused to process what her eyes were showing her. That couldn't be her father. Her father had kissed her forehead an hour ago. Her father had promised to teach her to track deer in the morning. Her father was... Chain the survivors. Mordecai's voice cut through her shock. The king included. They'll learn what it means to defy Iron Fang. Silver chains materialized. They wrapped around her mother's throat, around the necks of her neighbors, around the scholarly king who'd surrendered without drawing steel. The metal hissed against skin, burning, marking, claiming. Her mother's eyes found hers through the chaos. Blood ran down her chin where she'd bitten through her lip, but her voice came clear and sharp. Run, my little moon. Run and survive. Mama. Run! Laila ran. Her legs carried her through smoke and screams, past burning homes and broken bodies. She didn't stop when warriors shouted behind her. Didn't stop when her lungs burned and her bare feet left bloody prints on the forest floor. She ran until the trees swallowed her, until the sounds of slaughter faded to distant echoes, until her legs simply gave out. She collapsed against her grandmother's door, just as dawn began to break. Behind her, kilometers away but still visible through gaps in the trees, her village burned. Flames reached toward the lightening sky, orange and red and hungry, consuming everything she'd ever known. The blood moon was setting, giving way to morning, but the light it cast was wrong, filtered through smoke, tainted by ash. Laila pressed her small palm against the rough wood of the door and felt something inside her crystallize. Not breaking implied pieces that could be put back together. This was different. This was transformation. The girl who'd woken in her warm bed, safe and loved, had died back in that village square. What remained was something else entirely. The door opened. Her grandmother's weathered face appeared, took in Laila's blood-splattered nightgown and empty eyes, and understood everything in an instant. Come inside, little one. But Laila wasn't little anymore. Not where it mattered. She was 8 years old, and she'd just learned what hate tasted like. Her grandmother's hands were gentle as they cleaned the blood from Laila's skin, but the water in the basin turned pink, then red, then dark as old wine. The cloth moved across her arms, her face, her small fingers that had clutched at her mother's skirts as the warriors tore them apart. Tell me. Her grandmother's voice was soft as mountain mist, so Laila told her. Every word felt like swallowing glass, but she spoke them anyway. The smoke, the screams, the sound her father's neck had made. When she reached the part about the chains, about her mother's final command, her voice finally broke. Her grandmother pulled her close, and Laila buried her face in the old woman's shoulder. But no tears came. That well had run dry somewhere between the village and the mountain, leaving only ash behind. Sleep now, little moon. Her grandmother's fingers combed through her hair. Tomorrow, we begin. 4 years later, Laila's blade whistled through the air, stopping a hair's breadth from her opponent's throat. Dead, she announced. Marcus, a Shadow Ridge warrior twice her size, grinned despite the training sword pressed against his windpipe. You're getting faster, pup. I'm not a pup. Laila stepped back, lowering her weapon. Sweat traced lines down her spine despite the mountain cold. She was 12 now, all awkward angles and nervous energy, but her hands no longer trembled when they held steel. Again. The girl's relentless, Marcus muttered to his partner. But he raised his blade anyway. They'd been at it since dawn. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, but pain was just noise, easily ignored. She watched Marcus's feet, reading his next move in the shift of his weight. When he lunged, she was already moving, sliding inside his guard, her blade finding the vulnerable spot beneath his ribs. Dead, she said again. That night, she returned to her grandmother's cottage as the sun bled out behind the peaks. The old woman sat by the fire, grinding herbs with mortar and pestle. The rhythmic scrape of stone on stone filled the small space. "You're overdoing it." Her grandmother didn't look up. "Your body needs rest to grow strong." "I'm strong enough." Laila collapsed onto the rough wooden bench, her legs finally giving up their protest. "Strong enough for what, child?" Now those ancient eyes found hers. "What is it you're training for?" Layla's jaw tightened. "You know what?" Her grandmother set down the pestle with a soft click. "Revenge is a cold meal, little moon. It fills your belly but provides no nourishment." "I don't care about nourishment." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "I care about justice." Justice. Her grandmother tasted the word like something bitter. "Is that what you call it when you lie to the Shadow Ridge wolves? When you smile at Alpha Garrett while planning to use his warriors for your own ends?" Heat flushed Layla's cheeks. "I haven't lied to anyone. You haven't told them the truth either." The old woman rose, moving to the shelf where dried flowers hung in careful rows. "They think you're an orphan seeking purpose. They don't know you're a weapon forging itself. Maybe that's what orphans become. The silent stretch between them, filled only by the fire's crackle." Finally, her grandmother sighed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "Come here. Let me teach you something the Shadow Ridge warriors never will." Over the following months, her grandmother shared secrets passed down through generations of their bloodline. How to read terrain like a book, turning forests and mountains into allies. How to strike not just with claws and teeth, but with strategy and timing. How to lead wolves who thought themselves unteachable. A warrior's strength lies here. Her grandmother tapped Layla's chest. But a leader's strength lies here. She tapped her temple. Never confuse the two. Laila absorbed it all, hungry for anything that might give her an edge. She practiced in the pre-dawn darkness, visualizing scenarios, planning attacks that existed only in her mind. The Shadow Ridge wolves saw a dedicated student. Her grandmother saw the truth. A girl disappearing into the machinery of her own revenge. "You're losing yourself," her grandmother whispered one evening, as Laila sharpened her blade by firelight. The repetitive scrape of whetstone on steel had become almost meditative. "The child I knew. That child died 4 years ago." Laila didn't look up. "You know that." "Then I'm mourning her." The old woman's voice cracked. "Because you won't." Winter came early that year. Snow blanketed the mountain in silence, and with it came her grandmother's cough. Small at first, barely noticeable, but it grew, deepening into something wet and rattling that shook her frail frame. Laila made broths and teas, ground herbs until her fingers ached, but the cough only worsened. Some nights she woke to the sound of it echoing through the cottage, each hack stealing more of her grandmother's strength. "It's my time, little moon." Her grandmother's voice had become paper thin. "We all have our season." "No." Laila gripped her hand tighter. "You're going to be fine. You just need to rest, to listen to me." Those ancient eyes found hers with surprising clarity. "When I'm gone, you'll have nothing holding you back from this path you've chosen. So I'm asking you now, is revenge worth what it will cost you? What will it cost me? Everything soft, everything kind, everything that makes life worth living beyond mere survival." Her grandmother's fingers squeezed weakly. "Your father wouldn't want this for you." "My father is dead because he was too soft." The words tasted like poison, but Laila forced them out anyway, because our king was too weak. Because we weren't strong enough to defend ourselves. And when you've destroyed Iron Fang, when you've painted yourself in their blood, what then? Laila had no answer. Her grandmother died 3 nights later, quietly, with her hand still clasped in Laila's. One moment she was breathing, shallow but steady, and the next, she simply wasn't. The transition was so peaceful Laila almost missed it. She buried her on the mountainside at dawn, digging through frozen earth until her hands bled. No words seemed adequate, so she spoke none, just covered the grave with stones, and stood there as snow began to fall, watching white flakes settle on gray rock. The cold felt appropriate. Everything inside her felt cold now. When she returned to Shadow Ridge that afternoon, something had shifted in her bearing. The other warriors noticed it immediately. The way she held her shoulders, the directness of her gaze, the absence of the careful deference she'd always shown. "You all right, pup?" Marcus asked, his usual grin fading at her expression. "I'm not a pup," Laila said, and this time, nobody argued. She'd stopped pretending to be anything other than what she was, a weapon, honed and waiting. The only question remaining was when she'd finally cut. The tavern reeked of stale ale and desperation. Laila sat in the corner booth, her hood pulled low, watching a young man destroy himself one drink at a time. His hands shook as he raised the cup, not from the alcohol, but from something deeper. Something broken. 3 years of training had transformed her body into something lean and dangerous. At 15, she could outfight warriors twice her age, could read a battlefield like poetry, could lead drills that left grown wolves gasping. But Shadow Ridge's training grounds weren't enough anymore. She needed her own force. Wolves who understood what it meant to lose everything. The young man slammed his empty cup down, signaling for another. Laila rose and slid into the seat across from him. "You're drinking like a man trying to forget." Her voice was low, steady. "But some things don't wash away with ale." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Mid-20s, she guessed. Strong jaw, broad shoulders, a warrior's build gone soft at the edges. "Who the hell are you?" Someone who's seen that look before. She pushed his fresh cup aside. "Kale, isn't it? Former Blackwater pack?" His expression shifted. Surprise, then suspicion. "How do you know that name?" "Because I make it my business to know." She leaned forward. "Blackwater fell 2 years ago, raided by the Crimson Fangs. You were away on patrol when it happened. Came back to find your entire family." "Stop." His hand shot across the table, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. "You don't talk about them." Laila didn't flinch. "Why not? Because it hurts? Because remembering makes you want to crawl into a bottle and never come out?" She met his eyes without blinking. "I watched my father die when I was 8. Watched an alpha crush his throat like it meant nothing. My mother was chained and enslaved. So yes, Kale, I know exactly what you're trying to forget." His grip loosened. "What do you want?" "I want to give you something better than this." She gestured at the tavern, at his empty cups. "A chance to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. To become strong enough that no pack ever has to bury their children again." "Revenge, you mean?" "Purpose," she corrected. "There's a difference." Kale stared at her for a long moment, then laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're just a kid." "I'm old enough to know that drowning in ale won't bring them back." Laila stood. "But making ourselves strong enough to protect the next family? That might mean something. If you decide you want to mean something again, find me in Shadow Ridge territory. Ask for Laila." She left him sitting there, but she knew he'd come. They always did. The refugee camp sprawled across a valley like an open wound. Makeshift shelters housing displaced wolves from a dozen different territories. Packs destroyed by war, famine, or simply stronger neighbors. Laila moved through the rows, ignoring the stares, searching. She found Sarah sharpening a stolen knife behind a torn tent. The woman looked up, her movements instantly defensive. Scars crisscrossed her arms, some old, some fresh. Her hair had been hacked short with a blade, and her eyes held the wariness of something that had learned not to trust. "I'm not here to hurt you." Laila raised her empty hands. "I'm here to offer you a choice. Don't want your charity. Sarah's voice was gravel and smoke. Good. I'm not offering charity. Laila crouched, bringing herself to eye level. You escaped from the Silver Hollow slavers 3 months ago. Cut your way out with a kitchen knife and ran for 6 days straight. They're still looking for you. Sarah's knuckles whitened on her blade. How? I told you. I make it my business to know. Laila kept her voice even. You were sold at 13, spent 4 years learning how to survive in places that would have broken most wolves. That makes you exactly what I need. And what's that? A survivor who knows how to fight back. Over the following weeks, more came. Displaced warriors and broken soldiers, orphans who'd aged out of sympathy, wolves who'd lost their packs and hadn't found new ones. Each had their story. Each had their scars, visible and otherwise. Laila trained them in clearings far from Shadow Ridge's main grounds. She taught them what her grandmother had taught her, what 3 years of obsessive study had burned into her muscles and mind. But more than technique, she gave them something they'd lost. We're not strong because we haven't suffered, she told them during a brutal dawn session. Rain poured down, turning the training ground to mud, but nobody moved. We're strong because we have suffered, and we refuse to let it destroy us. Every scar is proof we survived. Every loss is proof we're still standing. Kyle had arrived 2 weeks after their tavern meeting, sober and serious. Now he stood beside her as her second, helping drill the others. Sarah led the stealth training, teaching techniques learned in captivity. Others brought their own expertise: tracking, weapons craft, field medicine. They became something new. Not quite a pack, not quite an army. Something in between. By her 18th birthday, she commanded 40 wolves who would follow her into fire. She slipped away from camp that night, needing solitude. The full moon rose fat and silver above the trees, calling to something deep in her bones. She'd been told it would happen soon. The first shift, the awakening of her wolf. The pain started in her spine. Laila gasped, falling to her knees as agony tore through her. Bones ground against each other, reshaping, breaking and reforming with sickening precision. Her fingers clawed at the forest floor, nails lengthening into claws, tearing through earth and roots. She wanted to scream, but her jaw was reshaping, teeth sharpening, and the sound that emerged was something between human agony and animal fury. Her skin rippled. Fur burst through in silver waves. Her vision sharpened, colors bleeding away but shapes becoming impossibly clear. Scents exploded across her awareness. Pine and earth, deer musk and distant water, the metallic tang of her own blood where bones had pierced skin during transformation. The pain crescendoed into something transcendent. And then, silence. Laila stood on 4 legs, her wolf form massive and silver-furred, steam rising from her coat in the cool night air. She threw back her head and howled a sound of triumph and grief and raw, furious purpose that echoed through the mountains. The moon seemed to answer, bathing her in cold light. She was no longer just a girl planning revenge. She was a force of nature, forged in loss and tempered by years of patient fury. Iron Fang had taken everything from her. Soon she would return the favor. The transformation back was almost worse than the shift itself. Layla's bones cracked and reformed, fur receding into skin that felt too thin, too vulnerable. She collapsed naked against a tree, gasping, her body slick with sweat despite the mountain cold. Dawn was still hours away, but she could feel it now. The wolf inside her, no longer dormant but awake and waiting. A presence that was herself and not herself, savage and patient in equal measure. She dressed slowly, every movement deliberate. Then she began the descent toward Shadow Ridge's main compound, toward Alpha Garrett's hall, toward the conversation that would set everything in motion. The guards at the entrance straightened as she approached. They knew her face. 7 years of training here had earned her that much. But something in her bearing tonight made them hesitate. I need to see Alpha Garrett. It's past midnight. Now. The word came out edged with command, with the authority of someone who'd learned to lead 40 wolves through blood and patience. Tell him Laila of the Fallen Thornhaven Pack requests an audience. Tell him I'm here to discuss Ironfang. The guard's expression shifted. He disappeared inside. Minutes later, she stood in Garrett's private war room. Maps covered every surface. Territory lines, trade routes, patrol patterns. The Alpha himself sat behind a heavy oak desk, his gray-shot beard and scarred hands marking him as a survivor of decades of pack politics. You've been busy. Garrett's voice was gravel and smoke. Training wolves in secret. Building yourself a little army. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I counted on you noticing. Laila moved to the largest map, her finger tracing the border between Shadow Ridge and Ironfang territory. The question is whether you're smart enough to see the opportunity. Careful, girl. The warning was soft but sharp. I've had wolves killed for less insolence. Then kill me. She turned to face him. Or listen to what I'm offering. Garrett leaned back, studying her with eyes that had evaluated countless warriors, countless threats. Speak. Ironfang grows stronger every year. They've absorbed 3 smaller packs in the last decade, enslaved the survivors, expanded their territory by nearly a third. Your border disputes with Mordecai aren't coincidence. He's testing you, seeing how far he can push before you push back. She pulled a rolled parchment from her belt, spreading it across his desk. This is their current patrol pattern. This is their celebration schedule. And this... Her finger stabbed at a specific date. This is when they'll be most vulnerable. Garrett's eyes narrowed as he studied her intelligence. The full moon gathering. When every warrior in their territory converges on the central grounds to celebrate their strength. He looked up. How did you get this information? I've spent 2 years placing observers near their borders. Talking to escaped slaves. Mapping their movements. Laila's voice was steady, clinical. I know their guard rotations, their weapon stores, the layout of their compound. I know Mordecai himself leads the moon ceremony, leaving their outer defenses undermanned. And I know you lost 2 emissaries last spring when they crossed into disputed territory. Officially, it was an accident. Unofficially, Mordecai sent their heads back in a box. Garrett's jaw tightened. As a message about respecting boundaries. He's provoking you, waiting for you to retaliate so he has justification to invade. Laila leaned forward. So don't give him what he expects. Give him something worse. A coordinated strike during their celebration, when their warriors are drunk and scattered, when Mordecai is performing rituals instead of commanding defenses. Hit them hard enough that Ironfang collapses, and suddenly all that territory they've absorbed. It could be yours. Or it could be a bloodbath that destroys both our packs. But Garrett was studying the map again, his strategic mind already running scenarios. Your 40 warriors against Ironfang's hundreds? My 40, plus your forces. I'm not asking you to give me your army. I'm offering you a partnership. My wolves strike first, create chaos, draw their defenders inward. Your warriors hit their flanks, cut off reinforcements. We free the slaves, who'll join our side. Suddenly the numbers aren't so uneven. And what do you get out of this? Besides revenge for your father? The question hung in the air between them. Laila could have lied, could have dressed her motivations in prettier clothes, but Garrett respected honesty more than politics. I get to look my mother in the eyes again. I get to free the wolves who've been enslaved for a decade, and I get to watch Mordecai bleed. Her voice dropped. That's what I get. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moving to the window that overlooked his territory. You're asking me to risk everything on the word of an 18-year-old orphan with a vendetta. I'm asking you to seize an opportunity that won't come again. Laila joined him at the window. Ironfang will keep growing until they're strong enough to swallow Shadow Ridge whole. You can wait for that day, or you can act now while we still have advantages. Your choice. You've become dangerous, girl. but there was something like approval in his voice. Not just skilled, dangerous, the kind of wolf that changes the landscape. Is that a yes? Garrett turned to face her fully. I'll commit 50 warriors to your assault. Trained fighters, not green recruits. They'll follow your initial strike once you've created the opening. He extended his hand. But if this fails, if my wolves die because your intelligence was faulty or your planning inadequate, I'll hold you personally responsible. Understood? Laila gripped his forearm in the warrior's clasp. Understood. The next 2 weeks were controlled chaos. Joint training sessions where Shadow Ridge veterans taught her recruits advanced formations. Strategy meetings that lasted until dawn, wargaming every possible scenario. The blacksmiths worked overtime, forging weapons and repairing armor. The ring of hammer on steel becoming the compound's constant soundtrack. Laila drove them all mercilessly, including herself. She slept 4 hours a night, spending the rest drilling her wolves, memorizing terrain, refining their approach. Kale became her shadow, translating her vision into actionable orders. Sarah scouted routes, finding hidden approaches through valleys and ridges. 3 days before the assault, Laila made the climb to her grandmother's grave. The stone cairn stood unchanged, weathered by seasons but solid. She knelt in the mountain grass, the wind carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. I know what you'd say. Her voice was barely a whisper. That revenge won't fill the emptiness, that I'm sacrificing too much of myself. She pressed her palm against the cold stone. Maybe you're right. Maybe when this is over, I won't recognize the person I've become, a bird called somewhere in the trees, lonely and sharp. But I can't stop now. Not when I'm this close. Not when Mother's still in chains. Laila stood, the wind pulling at her hair. I'll free them, grandmother. All of them. And then I'll figure out what comes after. She descended the mountain as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. On the night of departure, 90 wolves gathered in the forest clearing. Her 40 recruits, Garrett's 50 veterans, and Laila herself. They moved in absolute silence, a river of predators flowing through the darkness. Above them, the full moon rose, massive and silver, the same moon that had witnessed her father's death a decade ago. This time, it would witness something different. This time, the blood would belong to Ironfang. The Ironfang celebration grounds blazed with firelight and revelry. Hundreds of wolves, human-formed and beast-shaped, danced around massive bonfires, their howls rising to meet the full moon. The air reeked of roasted meat and spilled mead, of sweat and smoke and arrogance. Laila crouched in the tree line, watching. Beside her, Kale's breathing was controlled, steady. Further down the line, her warriors waited like coiled springs, invisible in the darkness beyond the firelight's reach. The slaves are kept in the eastern compound, Sarah whispered, appearing soundlessly at Layla's shoulder. 20 guards. I can get inside. Wait for the signal. Layla's eyes tracked the celebration's center, where Alpha Mordecai stood on a raised platform. He was exactly as she remembered. Massive, scarred, radiating casual dominance. A crown of iron thorns circled his brow, and his laugh carried across the grounds like thunder. 10 years. She'd waited 10 years for this moment. Her hand dropped, and 90 wolves exploded from the forest. The first wave hit the outer celebrants before they could even shift. Layla's recruits moved with surgical precision, targeting warriors too drunk or distracted to mount immediate defense. Screams replaced howls of celebration. Blood sprayed across ceremonial grounds where moments before there had been dancing. Eastern flank, move! Kale's roar cut through the chaos as he led 20 warriors toward the slave compound. His blade found an Ironfang guard's throat before the man could raise the alarm. Another guard shifted, bones cracking as he took wolf form, but Kale was already inside his guard, driving silver-tipped steel through fur and muscle. The Ironfang warriors were scrambling now, trying to organize, but Laila had counted on their complacency. A decade of unchallenged dominance had made them soft. They'd expected to celebrate undisturbed, not defend their lives. Garrett's veterans hit the southern flank like a hammer. These were wolves who'd survived decades of pack warfare, who moved with brutal efficiency. They cut through Iron Fang's confused defenders, pushing toward the weapons stores, denying the enemy their armories. Laila shifted mid-stride. The transformation was fluid now, practiced, her silver wolf form massive and terrible. She tore through the crowd, heading for Mordecai's platform, leaving broken bodies in her wake. An Iron Fang warrior lunged at her. She caught him by the throat with her jaws and shook once. His neck snapped like kindling. At the slave compound, Sarah moved like smoke through shadows. The guards never saw her coming, just felt the knife slide between their ribs, quick and quiet. She reached the iron door where slaves were kept and began working the lock with tools stolen from a blacksmith's corpse. "Sarah?" The voice from inside was raw, broken by years of screaming. "Quiet. I'm getting you out." The lock clicked. Sarah hauled the door open. They emerged like ghosts given form, gaunt figures marked by silver collar scars and decade-old wounds. Some could barely stand. Others trembled with something that might have been hope, or might have been terror. Then they saw the battle, saw their captors falling, and something ancient and furious blazed to life in their hollow eyes. A woman with gray-streaked hair grabbed a fallen guard's sword. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "We're slaves no longer." They joined the fight with desperate savagery. No training, no coordination, just raw hatred given form. One man tore into an Iron Fang warrior with bare hands, ignoring his own injuries. A woman who couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds drove a dagger through a guard's eye socket and didn't stop stabbing until someone pulled her off the corpse. Among them, a scholarly-looking man with silver collar scars stood frozen, staring at the chaos. Their former king, broken by a decade of humiliation, watched his people fight and couldn't remember how to move. Buildings caught fire as Garrett's wolves threw torches through windows. The celebration grounds became an inferno, smoke and flame mixing with blood and screams until the air itself seemed poisoned. Laila reached the platform in her wolf form, shifting back to human as she leaped. She landed facing Mordecai, naked and blood-splattered, her silver hair wild around her face. He looked at her and went utterly still. "I know those eyes." His voice was soft, almost wondering. "Your father had eyes like that, right before I crushed his throat." "My name is Laila of Thornhaven." She circled left, her movements predatory. "You killed my father. You enslaved my mother. You destroyed my pack." Mordecai laughed. That same terrible sound from her nightmares. "The little girl from the village square. I wondered if you'd survived." He began shifting, bones cracking, fur erupting. "This will be poetic." His wolf form was nightmare incarnate, black as old blood, covered in scars that spoke of 100 battles survived. He was twice her size, ancient and vicious, alpha of alphas. He lunged. Laila barely dodged, his fangs missing her throat by inches. She shifted mid-roll, coming up in wolf form, circling. They were the same species, but might as well have been different animals. Him massive and brutal, her smaller but faster. He charged again, and this time she met him head-on. The collision was bone-jarring. They tumbled across the platform in a tangle of fangs and claws, tearing at each other with savage intensity. His jaws closed on her shoulder. Agony exploded through her. She twisted, raking her claws across his face, feeling flesh tear. They separated, circling. Blood poured from Laila's shoulder, but she ignored it. Pain was just noise. Around them, the battle raged. Kale was fighting 3 wolves at once, his sword a blur of silver. Sarah had shifted and was tearing through Iron Fang's rear guard with brutal efficiency. The freed slaves fought with the desperation of those with nothing left to lose. Mordecai feinted left, then struck right. His claws opened Laila's flank, scoring deep furrows through fur and muscle. She stumbled, and he pressed his advantage, slamming into her with his full weight. They crashed through the platform railing, falling 10 feet to the ground below. Laila landed hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Mordecai was on her instantly, jaws seeking her throat. She caught his muzzle with both front paws, barely holding those massive jaws at bay. His breath was hot and rank. His eyes held nothing but cold amusement, the confidence of something that had never truly been challenged, never truly been beaten. In that moment, staring up at her father's killer, Laila understood something. She was going to die here. She wasn't strong enough, wasn't experienced enough. All her training, all her planning, it wasn't enough, but she refused to die alone. Laila released his muzzle and lunged upward, catching his throat in her jaws. He tried to jerk away, but her teeth were already deep. She tasted blood, hot and bitter, and bit down harder. His claws raked her sides, opening terrible wounds. Her back legs kicked at his belly, claws finding soft tissue. They were locked together, both dying, both refusing to let go first. The world narrowed to blood and pain and the frantic hammering of her heart. Mordecai's struggles weakened. The pressure of his claws lessened. Laila bit down one final time and felt something vital give way beneath her fangs. He collapsed, taking her with him. They lay in the blood-soaked dirt, predator and prey both, neither entirely sure which was which. Laila shifted back to human, her body screaming protest at the movement. She crawled on top of Mordecai's massive wolf form, watching the light fade from his eyes. "His name was Rowan," she whispered, her voice raw. "Remember it in whatever hell waits for you." His eyes went glassy. The great chest stilled. Around her, the sounds of battle were fading, not into silence, but into something else. Victory. Her wolves were howling, the sound spreading like wildfire through the compound. Laila tried to stand and couldn't. The wounds were too deep, the blood loss too severe. She collapsed beside Mordecai's corpse, staring up at the full moon that had witnessed everything. It looked exactly the same as it had 10 years ago. She wondered if that should mean something. Then darkness claimed her, and she wondered nothing at all. Laila woke to the smell of herbs and burning sage. Her body was a symphony of agony. Every breath felt like knives in her ribs. Every slight movement pulled at wounds stitched with careful precision. She was alive somehow, despite blood loss that should have killed her twice over. Easy. Sarah's voice, rough with exhaustion. "You've been out for 2 days." Laila's eyes focused slowly. She was in a tent, presumably Iron Fang's former command structure. Through the open flap, she could see the aftermath, bodies being burned in mass pyres, wounded warriors tended in makeshift field hospitals, buildings still smoldering. "We won?" Her voice was sandpaper and rust. "We won." Sarah helped her sit up, supporting her weight. 43 of our warriors dead, 22 of Garrett's. The rest will survive mostly. Nearly half their forces. The number sat heavy in Laila's chest. "The slaves?" "Freed. All of them." Sarah paused. "Your mother's asking for you." Laila's breath caught. 10 years. A decade since she'd heard her mother's voice, felt her mother's touch. She tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Sarah steadied her, helping her outside. The woman waiting by the smoldering celebration grounds bore little resemblance to Laila's memories. Her mother had been vibrant once. Dark hair glossy, skin smooth, eyes bright with laughter. The creature before her was skeletal, gray-streaked, marked by silver scars where the collar had burned for years. Her hands trembled constantly. "Laila?" The word came out uncertain, as if she feared she'd gotten it wrong. "Mother." Laila limped forward, closing the distance between them. They stood there, strangers occupying the same space, neither quite sure how to bridge 10 years of suffering. Her mother's eyes traveled over Laila's warrior's body, the scars and muscle, the cold competence in her bearing. "You're so—" Her mother's voice broke. "You're not my little girl anymore." "No." Laila felt something crack inside her chest. "I'm not." Her mother reached out, touching Laila's face with shaking fingers. "I held on to your memory. The 8-year-old who loved wildflowers and told silly stories. I used that memory to survive the worst days." Tears tracked through the dirt on her face. "But that girl's gone, isn't she? She died the night you told her to run." They embraced, but it felt wrong. Two people performing a ritual they no longer understood. Her mother's body was brittle as old branches. Laila's arms knew how to hold weapons, not trembling ghosts of the past. Behind them, a commotion drew their attention. The freed king, Aldrich, was attempting to give orders to Garrett's warriors. His voice carried that scholarly tone Laila remembered, but it held no authority, no strength. "Need to establish proper chain of command. As your rightful king, I demand—" "You demand nothing." One of Garrett's veterans spat at the king's feet. "You surrendered without a fight, spent 10 years in chains while the rest of us bled. You've got no right to command anyone." Aldrich's face flushed. "I am your alpha, my bloodline. Your bloodline means shit if you won't defend it." Cale's voice cut through the argument. His armor was still blood-stained, his sword still strapped to his back. "Laila led us. Laila planned this. Laila killed Mordecai while you cowered in your cell." The truth of it hung in the air, undeniable and brutal. Aldrich's eyes found Laila's across the compound. She saw the plea there, the desperate hope that she'd support his claim, restore his dignity. But she'd spent 10 years learning that authority was earned, not inherited. She said nothing. The journey home took 5 days. They moved slowly, burdened by wounded and traumatized freed slaves who hadn't walked free ground in a decade. Laila rode at the front, her healing wounds making every step of her horse's gait an exercise in controlled agony. Her mother rode beside her, silent mostly, occasionally reaching out to touch Laila's arm, as if confirming she was real. Each touch felt like an accusation of everything Laila had become to reach this moment. By the 3rd day, they'd lost 2 more warriors to infected wounds. By the 4th, one of the freed slaves simply stopped walking and refused to continue, his mind finally breaking under the weight of freedom he no longer knew how to process. When the ruins of Thornhaven village appeared on the horizon, a collective silence fell over the caravan. For the freed slaves, this was home. For Laila's warriors, this was the cause they'd bled for. For Laila, it was a graveyard. The rebuilding consumed the next months. Garrett provided resources in exchange for territorial concessions, former Ironfang lands divided between Shadowridge and the restored Thornhaven. Homes were raised from rubble and memory. Fields were cleared and planted, defensive walls constructed, higher and stronger than before. Laila oversaw it all with the same tactical precision she'd brought to warfare. She trained the new guard, drawing from her warriors and the freed slaves who still had fight in them. She established patrol routes, supply chains, trade agreements. Aldrich occupied the rebuilt Alpha's hall, but everyone knew who truly commanded Thornhaven. When disputes arose, they came to Laila. When threats emerged, they looked to her. The king was a figurehead, a symbol of continuity that satisfied tradition, but held no real power. Her official title was Commander of the Royal Guard, bestowed in a ceremony where Aldrich placed a silver chain around her neck. The metal felt cold and heavy, nothing like the triumph she'd imagined. That night, Laila climbed the mountain path to her grandmother's grave. The stone cairn stood unchanged, patient and silent. She knelt in the grass, staring at rocks that had witnessed her transformation from broken child to weapon to leader. "I did it." Her voice was hollow. "I freed them, killed Mordecai, rebuilt the kingdom." She pressed her palm against the cold stone. Everything I swore I'd do, I did." The wind carried no answers, only the scent of pine and distant snow. "So why does it feel like I lost?" Her mother tried to rebuild their relationship, but the foundation was gone. They lived in the same village, ate meals together sometimes, but they were strangers pretending at intimacy. Her mother flinched at Laila's casual violence, at the way she could discuss battle tactics over breakfast. Laila couldn't understand her mother's fragility, her inability to simply move forward. The warriors who'd followed her understood. Kale, Sarah, the others, they knew what it cost to become strong enough to survive. But even they were changing, softening at the edges as peace replaced purpose. 6 months after their victory, Laila stood on the newly constructed walls, staring out at Thornhaven's restored lands. Families worked in fields, children played in streets. Life continued, as it always did, indifferent to what had been sacrificed to protect it. She felt nothing. No satisfaction. No peace. Just the hollow echo where something vital used to live. That night, she returned to the mountain one final time. She stripped away her armor, her weapons, her commander's chain. Stood naked under the full moon and let the shift take her. Her wolf form emerged, silver and scarred, powerful and terrible. Laila threw back her head and howled. The sound carried across the mountains, through the valleys, a cry that was triumph and grief and rage and emptiness all woven together. She'd achieved everything she'd set out to accomplish. Freed her people, avenged her father, became exactly what she'd needed to become. And in doing so, had destroyed the girl who'd started this journey, the 8-year-old who'd loved her father, who'd clutched her mother's hand, who'd believed in safety and kindness. That child was truly dead. The woman who remained was strong and capable, and utterly hollow. Victory tasted like ash. Her howl faded into the night, swallowed by indifferent stars. The moon watched, cold and distant, offering no comfort, no answers. Some things once broken could never be made whole. Laila understood that now, understood it in her bones and blood and the empty space where her heart used to beat. She'd won her war, she'd lost herself, and there was no going back.